You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, June 30th. Joined as always on a Monday, off-season Monday. Once again, Weston, how you doing?
I'm good, Steph. I mean, I'm actually excited that we're doing this on a Monday. It felt like a long time
Wednesday
since we've actually
weird.
Yeah, I feel like we just saw each other a couple of days. I'm getting so excited. I'm knocking my desk around here, but I'm good. I'm really excited to talk about what we're going to talk about this evening. So I'll let you unveil the curtain of what's at hand here, but I am pumped up for this conversation.
Well, I do think the title maybe spoiled it a little bit, but yeah, I mean, we are going to be talking about George Kittle. Tight end university just wrapped up, and it seemed like it was a hell of a time for Kittle and just all the guys there. We say it like all the time that we think Kittle has fun no matter what he's doing. Like, his Instagram story is just always just full of him having a great time. So, we'll talk about George Kittle in a different sense, though, from the playing standpoint, because last week when talking about tight end university and George Kittle, Weston kind of dropped the possibility of George Kittle being the greatest of all time, a tight end, when all is said and done. We're going to take a look at the stats. We're going to be a little biased because we're 49er fans, of course, but we're also going to be plenty objective when looking at it, and we're going to be real about it. So we'll talk about that. But first, actually, Weston, the first thing we're going to talk about is actually not great news at all. So sorry to start on this note, but on Thursday night, Deommodore Lenoir was arrested, and some of you probably already know this by now or have seen this. The details, according to Associated Press, and this comes directly from the police report. I'll just read it, what it says here from AP. Los Angeles police said they saw multiple double-parked cars blocking traffic at about 5:30 p.m. Thursday. They said a suspect appearing to conceal contraband threw the keys to one of the cars to Diamador Lenor, who refused to give them to officers. Officers eventually recovered a gun and narcotics in one of the cars. Lenor, who's 25 years old, was arrested and booked on the charge of delaying and resisting a peace officer. He was later released at around 1 a.m. Friday and is due to appear in court July 25th. Which is interesting, Weston, because there's something coming up around that time, and it would be training camp for the veterans. Their reporting day is July 22nd, so I have a feeling that Diamador Lenor probably gonna miss a day or two while he attends to this manner. But Weston, I'm not too worried about this. Like I'm not moved.
I mean, I'm not like unmoved because things were felt like such smooth sailing so far this offseason.
Yeah.
That when you saw the headline, you were just like, oh my God, here we go.
There's the shoe.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, we can't have nice things, and here's why they don't pay people big money, because all of a sudden the guy that you just did quietly behind the scenes is appearing in headlines for all the wrong reasons. But yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, like, you'd never want one of the players on the team that you root for having any brushes with the law. I still can't believe this happens with all of the money and all of the things that they can do to circumvent this, but just proves they're still humans who still make mistakes. But, you hear a lot of things in there like concealed contraband and gun and narcotics, none of which actually directly points back to Demo in any capacity. Sounds like somebody he's with. And look, we're not far into this. Professional athletes carry weapons, and so do their counterparts and colleagues. They're targets. We saw what happened when Ricky Pearsall last year in the offseason, right? Like, I'm never going to knock a grown man, woman, anything for the right to bear arms or protect yourself, your family, whatever it is, right? Like, for me, Steph, I don't think this moves the needle for the league either. You know what I mean? In terms of suspension or anything. Like, I bet was released. It was probably under his own reconnaissance, which means no bail, no anything like actually required. The 25th, if I read this correctly, he can actually send his attorney. He doesn't even actually have to appear himself.
Yeah, even better.
What I would love to see is, because we've been talking so much about in the offseason, like, give this guy a C on his jersey. He should be a captain. Just paid him this money. I don't think any of this actually changes that for me. I mean, shit, if I'm reading between the lines, sounds like he was just sticking up for one of his boys in a scenario. If anything, like, give him the C now, like that's what he's doing on the field. But as a grown man, handle his business, handle his responsibility, I'd be fine with him missing a day or two of camp to go handle this on his own. But I don't even think he has to. So it just, everything was so good, right? We were just dealing with dragging BA nonsense. You know what I mean? Like, you could overlook it, and then it was just like this. So that's, I think we got up in uproar about that. But like, I mean, I'm not excusing Demo for being in a bad situation, right? Because like, look, at the end of the day, you are who you hang out with, right? That's what you were always taught in life. You don't need that label. Like, you just literally signed a $90 million contract. Like, handle your business for the next few years and then go do whatever you want in your personal life.
You are who you hang out with. And I almost forgot that like Lenor's only 25.
He's
like
a kid. He's a baby,
when you're that
Steph.
Young, sometimes you don't hang out with the greatest people.
I'm 42 and I don't hang out with the greatest people. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. I'm empathetic to this scenario, but I also don't have the bankroll that he does where I can why are you even driving anywhere? You should just have a driver.
And why is your friend throwing you his keys?
Yeah.
When I'm assuming, we don't know this, but I'm assuming the car that had the contraband was the one that had the keys thrown to Lenor. The guy who has a lot to lose. I don't know who the other guy was, but I'm just saying, like, it doesn't seem like the greatest friend. But I digress. I mean, for Lenor, I think it's a nothing burger. Still not the greatest thing. The 49ers issue a statement, says, quote, "We are aware of the matter involving Diamador Lenor and are in the process of gathering further information," end quote. That's pretty much, the cookie cutter statement for any arrest. But, I agree with you, Weston. I don't think it's going to be a big deal to the NFL either. I'll be surprised if he gets suspended. If he does, maybe a game at most. Like, come on, what are we doing here? But
I just think, like, all right, grand scheme of things here, right? Justin Tucker, what did he get? 10 games?
Yeah.
And this is the Deshaun Watson saga all over again, right? So if you're making comparisons, which we're going to do a lot later in this show based on the title, but if you're making comparisons, this feels like, and we don't have all the details, but it feels like a whole lot of nothing in comparison to those things. And that guy can still play this year. You know what I mean? So like, I don't believe this warrants a suspension unless more information comes out. Unless you find out the gun was in his car or whatever, you know what I mean? The weed was in his pocket. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, whatever it is. But based on what we know now, like, this is show up to your court appearance, pay your fine, move on,
Exactly. And with that, we'll be moving on to our next topic. And we're really excited to do so because it is about none other than one of our favorite players on this team, George Kittle, the guy who's been making headlines this week with the tight end university. So the topic today is going to be, can George Kittle become the greatest tight end ever? Look, we know that he's not that right now. So that is not what we're saying. We're not saying that he is the greatest of all time right now, but we think it is maybe in the realm of possibility that he could be when his career is all said and done. So we're going to look at the George Kittle numbers, career stats as it stands today. We're going to compare that with some of the tight end greats that have graced this league. And, at the end of it, we'll kind of come to a conclusion. And I hope you guys are ready to join us in the discussion today in the live chat. Audio listeners, send me an email. I don't know. But let's start off with George Kittle career stats. So he entered the league 2017, had a pretty impressive rookie season from what we can recall, but he really blew up in his second year in the league. That 2018 season, we had 1,377 yards, monstrous yards per reception, 15.6, 5 touchdowns that year. But it was the yards that was really the big thing, the receiving yards. George Kittle, like what can you say about him, right? And he's been the model of consistency. Yeah, if you look at his career stats from 2017 all the way to 2024, you see a lot of things jump out. 4 seasons over 1,000 yards. The yards per reception has remained 10 plus over his entire career, every single season. And again, he's topped at 15.7 yards per reception in 2023. He had 11 touchdowns in 2022 season. Just this past year, he had 8. So he's many things for this team. And it almost feels, Weston, this is crazy to say, but we say it all the time. He could be doing so much more. And we know that. Like, we know his stats could be so much crazier if he was used in the same fashion that maybe some of the other tight end greats that we're going to talk about as well have gotten. If he got the same opportunities, but it almost makes it even more impressive that he's been able to put all this together with a subpar quarterback at times, quarterback play, and just not having the same amount of target volume that some of these other guys have.
I mean, we made this bold statement, or I made this statement. You didn't disagree, right? That this guy was on a trajectory to be the greatest to do it at his position. And you see the stats in front of you. And I don't base my assessment just off of stats. But if we're just talking about the stats, the numbers you see right there, 7,300 yards, that's good for 13th all time on the NFL's list for tight ends, with a lot of runway ahead of him. He has played in basically, in the first handful of years he was here, in a quarterback inept offense that was run heavy. Yeah. And the passing game was dependent upon him being in the pocket. I mean, he had 1,377 yards with Nick Mullins at quarterback. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a knock on Nick. It's just, like he didn't, Tony Gonzalez, the man, right? Like, he played in good offenses in Kansas City. He played with Matt Ryan in Atlanta. Travis Kelce's been playing with Patrick Mahomes, right? Jason Witten has played with some good quarterbacks in his career. Shannon Sharp played with John Elway. Rob Gronkowski has played with the greatest to ever do it at their position. Like, you go through these names that we're going to go through a little bit. I think what's awesome for me with George, and again, we'll pull apart all of this like more. I know you got slides upon slides to break this down for us, Steph, but I think I just want to call you Slides because you're just so slick. Like, that's it. Steph just slides into the equation. But in any case, like, I'm going to say this out loud, and it's going to make me sound like the worst 49ers fan in the world. But when he was drafted in 2017 in the 5th round, I said, who the F is George Kittle? He played in an Iowa offense, not well known. Now is all of a sudden tight end university after George Kittle makes it to the NFL. Not super well known, a pro style offense, a guy who caught like 30-something passes in his final year in college, came into the combine. He's got a towel hanging out of his nose from taking a ball or getting a bloody nose. Ran well, ran a 4.5, but you're like, all right, this guy just looks good in shorts and t-shirts. And again, who the hell is George Kittle when they were drafted in the 5th round? You know what he felt like when he was drafted? Felt like tight end 2. You know what I mean? A guy who can block, most of the tape that they showed when you're talking about this guy being drafted showed him blocking, right? Show him doing those things, puts on his weight, comes into the league, and he's taken the league by storm. So before I even pass it back, there you go, right there, right? Like, tissue out of the nose. Like, this is the dude working out. He's so young. He's such a baby there, Where's the long Kittle hair? What a crazy story, and I know the NFL is like littered with it, but I can't wait to talk more about like how he's clearly on the trajectory to be, if not he's a top 3 discussion all time to ever do it by the time he hangs it up. I think he's in that discussion now. Take the statistics out of it because he does so much more than just what you see on your screen, but we'll talk about it.
I think that's going to be the hard part. And yes, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but that's always the hard part to kind of, I guess, put into perspective with everything else. We know that there's context to everything, but unfortunately, when it comes to these types of conversations of the GOAT talk and all that, context kind of goes out the window, and everyone pays attention to stats, especially when a lot of time has passed for some of these guys. We have all the context on George Kittle now because we're living it, we're seeing it. But as time passes, some of that is going to fade a little bit, just as it has for some of the other greats that we're going to be talking about, which makes the conversation really interesting. But of course, us 49er fans, we will bring up some of that context. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it matters too much, Weston. So, yeah, that is part of the conversation, though, for sure. As far as,
you talk about living. So this is where it's Steph. It's great that you have this elder statesman in me as part of this conversation. Who's seen
Weston's going to have so much to say about
a lot of football. Like if you think about this, just statistically speaking, and specifically just total receiving yards at the position, Tony Gonzalez, Jason Witten, Travis Kelce, Antonio Gates, Shannon Sharp, Rob Gronkowski, Greg Olsen, Jimmy Graham, Zach Ertz. That's 1 through 9. I've seen their entire careers. Right? Ozzie Newsome, number 10, have not. Jackie Smith, number 11, have not. Vernon Davis, number 12, absolutely have. And George Kittle's there at number 13. So I think I can come from a position of knowledge on this subject that I have seen the people ahead of him's body of work. Now, some people will say Kellen Winslow Sr., that they'll want to throw in there, played in a different era or didn't throw the ball nearly as much. But I would argue Kellen Winslow was the first ever version of Travis Kelce, a guy who really played wide receiver as a tight end. So again, not to knock what he does. That's obviously Travis Kelce is fantastic at what he does, and Kellen Winslow was. But I think when we start talking about where George Kittle will get knocked, they'll say he's only got 7,000 receiving yards. And we'll talk about how he's always played in a run for, top 5 rushing offense in the National Football League with no quarterback. But then we can start to dissect these stats to say, well, if you look at average yards per reception, receiving yards per game, things of that nature, he actually crushes all of the people above him. It's almost criminal when you look at this list and say, look at this underutilization of this absolute gift from the football gods to your football team. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, and that is always the difficult part too, because there will be some guys in the discussion that are far and away better at one thing, and you could say, look, this guy's at the top of the list here, but in the full body of work, you got to be able to make that whole case. And that's a difficult thing because we look at George Kittle and we say, well, he's maybe one of the most complete tight ends that we see. When we think about the role that the tight end should have in an offense, if you think about it, not just being from the receiving aspect, you think about, the role to be a blocker as well. George Kittle's up there as the most complete, well-rounded tight end I think we've ever seen, and we can say that right now, right? Just from that standpoint.
Without question, you have just as much film of him pancaking people as you do of him catching touchdowns, right?
Yeah. Where's the stat for that? Pancakes.
Yeah, if he catches 1 touchdown a game, he's remembered. But the reality is he probably had 4 pancakes in that game in terms of if they go into the coaching statistics. And again, not a knock on these. There's a couple of these guys above him statistically that I would say were really good complete players, right? They did what the position asked for. They weren't part of that just flanker tight end, kind of positionless ball, if you will. But he does it all, Steph. And he does it all better than everybody else. Like, how many times we said this? When Trent Williams is not in the lineup, Hall of Fame left tackle, by the way, when he's not in the lineup, George Kittle is the best offensive lineman on his football team. And it's not just now. It's been since the second he got here. He's been that guy. And when you talk to him, or when you, I wish I talked to George. I mean, that would be literally my day. I did get one of those happy birthday shout outs from George Kittle. You know, when people would be like, George, wish I had somebody like a couple of years ago. That's like my claim. But in any case, like, if you talk to him, or if you listen to him talk, he takes, I think, more pride in that element of the game than what you see on your screen right here from a statistic speaking.
Absolutely.
I don't think these other guys feel that same way. You know what I mean? Like, I think and that's not a knock on what they take pride in. It's just, that's what they were asked to do their entire career. You know, like, you're another receiver on this team, but you're going to chip block. You're going to do some things. You're not going out, you know, for to catch past 3 downs. But like, we're talking about sometimes a lack of production from George Kittle because he is required to be maintained on the offensive line to protect his quarterback. You know, it's crazy what honestly, for how much talent this guy has shown in the league, I am surprised he has not demanded his way off this roster. The way it's constructed. I'm being serious.
Hey,
you know
I mean, the 49ers have been pretty successful.
They've been successful.
In his tenure.
They've been good to him.
But he's a very loyal guy.
If he was, yes. But if he wasn't, and you hear the stories about the letters that his dad would write him before every game and do those things and how much that matters, right? I'm sure loyalty is probably why he never left Iowa, right? Like, when there are those opportunities, not that he was part of the true transfer portal like it is now, but you can still leave. You weren't committed back then. But if he was just truly a me guy, there's probably 29 other teams in the league that he could have gone to, and his statistics would look even more ridiculous than they already do.
Oh yeah. I think that's and we'll probably say it over and over, like, throughout 49 carats, right? Like,
no.
And we've said it so many times that, if he had the same amount of opportunities as some of these other guys, his stats would be well and above. Like, I think everyone would kind of be talking about him in the same light that we do. It would be undeniable. But yeah, let's continue on with some of George Kittle's career accomplishments. So we talked about the 4,000-yard seasons, 2018, 2019, 2023, and 2024. Only other tight ends to have accomplished this have been Travis Kelce, Rob Gronkowski, Witten, and Tony Gonzalez. So that's pretty good company right there that George Kittle
Hall of Fame. Exactly. You know what I mean? Like, what?
If anything, Weston, like, if we don't come to the conclusion that Kittle's the GOAT by the end of this, or that he will be,
I quit.
We'll certainly come to the conclusion that he's a Hall of Famer. Like, we know that already.
Yes, absolutely.
We know that already. But
get this man a Super Bowl, and it's a done deal. He can hang it up now, and it's a done deal.
I think among a lot of the awards, which I think I was telling Weston this earlier, and I think we all know this, that awards is a big thing for how the GOATs are weighted. And for George Kittle, he's a 6-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time first team All-Pro, a 3-time second team All-Pro, no Super Bowls yet, but that definitely helps the case, I think. Although I will say, I think championships generally in sports and GOAT discussions are weighed heavier for, like, quarterbacks than maybe like another position like tight end. Because I don't know, you're just kind of more of a cog in the machine than, quarterbacks are always seen as like the leaders of the team, whether or not that's true. I don't believe in quarterback wins entirely, but I also do think that, quarterbacks are big part of team success. So I think that's fine. But maybe for George Kittle and other tight ends' sake, I don't think, a Super Bowl is going to tip the scale one way or the other.
No. Especially like a true tight end, right? Like, And I think that's another thing to consider in this conversation with George is like, he can be a game wrecker. Like he could, but how often is he like given that opportunity? Like because you can argue that Gronk was a game wrecker every time, but he was certainly used significantly more as a wide receiver than he ever was as an inline blocker. So he was given more of an opportunity. And I'm not taking away again from anything I think he's one of the guys that actually was a pretty good blocker in his career, right? And like took some pride in a physical guy, but he certainly played away from the line of scrimmage quite often. It's one of those things that like because you can easily point to the games where he's been absent. You know what I mean? Where it's like, well, if he's that good, why is he showing up this game, which is way beyond his control? Yeah, 2 Super Bowls, right? 2 Super Bowls, right? Let's on the biggest stage. You could say, did you forget this guy's on your football team? You know what I mean? Like, I want you to get to your 4th bullet point here, and then we can come back to the point that I was just making about like being a game wrecker.
Yeah, and you talked about the awards, right? Like just all the accolades that he's gotten. Let's shift to his accomplishments within the 49ers franchise, because this is the reason why we all hold him near and dear to our hearts, and why, he's the greatest. Maybe I think he's already the greatest 49ers tight end.
No question
that there was. And hopefully I'm not just saying that because he's because the only other one that I saw was probably Vernon Davis. And I think he's better than Davis.
I'd say I'd go in this order. Listen, Vernon was a game breaker too, but it's Kittle, Brent Jones, and then Vernon, probably, especially just from like, I mean, statistically speaking, Vernon blows like Brent Jones out of the water, but those late 80s, early 90s 49ers team with Brent Jones at tight end, he was a moose. And another one who did a lot of what Kittle does, but it's not even like, you're not wrong, you're not inaccurate. I don't think anybody would dispute you on it that's been a 49ers fan long enough to say that George Kittle is the best to play the position for the franchise, unquestionably.
For sure. So let's rattle some of these off, right? Especially for the audio listeners. There's a lot on this list. Okay, so franchise records that George Kittle owns: most receptions by a tight end in franchise history, 538 catches; most receiving yards by a tight end, 7,380 yards and counting; most single season receptions by a 49ers tight end, 88 catches in 2018; most single season receiving yards by a 49ers tight end, that 2018 season again, 1,377 yards. First 49ers touchdown with multiple 1,000-yard seasons that started in 2018 and 2019. He has a total of 4 now. Fastest to 400 receptions in franchise history. He reached that in 84 games. Most seasons with 1,000 or more receiving yards by a 49ers tight end. That'd be 4 seasons. Okay, we kind of already covered that. Most games with 100+ receiving yards by a tight end in his first 8 seasons, 20 games. That's the second in NFL history as well. Most receiving yards by a tight end in first 3 NFL seasons, 2,945 yards. That's an NFL record. Most receiving yards by a tight end in a half, 210 yards. That's an NFL
when they
record.
Were still the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah, that was a game, wasn't it? That was a game.
That was wild. That was a Nick Mullins, George Kittle game. That's what that was.
Yeah, I mean, they had their moments, those two. So
sure did.
Yeah, I mean, this is why he's regarded, I think, within 49ers fandom as, the best 49ers tight end there ever was. But now let's look at how he compares to some of the other, I would say, I'm not calling them all GOATs. I'm just saying, like, this is top 5 discussion, I think, for tight ends. We've got Tony Gonzalez on this list. We've got Rob Gronkowski. We got Antonio Gates, Shannon Sharp. And we also have Travis Kelce on the list, because I think if we're going to have this conversation about George Kittle, we have to have this conversation about Travis Kelce as well, who is still also playing in the league and adding to his numbers as it stands. So this is an impressive list. And looking at it, you see Tony Gonzalez with 15,127 career receiving yards, 111 touchdowns, which, Antonio Gates has 116, but 14 plus Pro Bowls, 14 Pro Bowls, 6 All Pros. Wow. Like, wow is right, Weston. I mean, feels like an untouchable number. And I think right now I want to say with great certainty, Gonzalez is the GOAT.
He absolutely is. It's really not even up for debate at this moment in time. And especially those numbers you see, like those are just for 49er fan comparison. That's like what Tony has at the tight end position is what Jerry Rice has at the wide receiver position. Like it's almost a certainty that he's probably not going to get eclipsed in a lot of those categories. Well, he was passing touchdowns by Antonio Gates. Antonio Gates does have more career touchdowns than Tony Gonzalez. But context here too, Steph. Context matters, right? Like, so Tony Gonzalez, what did he play? 17 years in the league? What's George Kittle?
17 seasons.
Yeah.
It was 2013 when he retired officially. Yeah, 17 seasons. He was 37 when he retired.
Right after the 49ers beat the Falcons in the NFC Championship. Just putting that out there for you right there. What a game that was. Oh, my God. Do you remember that game, Steph, or no?
Yeah, of course I do.
Okay.
Of course I do.
That was wild.
And, yeah, I mean, I think that's another topic in all this, too. Kind of like the context that we want to bring into the conversation is 17 seasons. That's a hell of a lot. And yes, 14 Pro Bowls in a 17-year span is also a lot. That's pretty insane. Rob Gronkowski, I think, like in modern NFL, like he's kind of the guy that a lot of people would say, like Gronk's the GOAT. Like if you're building a team and you could get any of these guys in their prime, like a lot of people would probably say Gronk. He was only 29 when he retired. Like
wild.
And he dealt with a lot of injuries.
A lot of injuries
in his career. I would have loved to have seen what Gronk could have done if he didn't have to retire so young because of the injuries.
The wrong injuries too, like the back. You know what I mean? For the position you do, you just can't do it. But you know what? Gronk could have soared to crazy, ridiculous heights. But you remember Gronk more than you're going to remember Tony Gonzalez because Gronk won a whole bunch of Super Bowls.
Tony
Gonzalez never won a Super Bowl. Never won a Super Bowl, right? Antonio Gates never won a Super Bowl. Shannon Sharpe won 2 with and obviously Kelce's won a few. But again, context. Tony Gonzalez, 17 years in the league. George Kittle, 7 years in the league, 8 years in the league, whatever it was. Tony Gonzalez, nearly 1,900 total targets in his career. George Kittle, 700 targets, right? 733 to 1,200 more targets. Receiving yards a game for people who want to make it statistical. Tony Gonzalez, 56 yards a game. George Kittle, 65.3 yards per game. Tony Gonzalez played in 270 football games. George Kittle's played in 113. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you know what I mean? Like, this is where I start to get really upset. Like, what the hell have we been doing? You know what I mean? Like, we're just wasting this man's career. Like,
show this to Kyle Shanahan and be like, "Yo, you could have the GOAT tight end.
You have them.
Use it.
Just use them. You know what I mean? Like, what are we like? You got people way smarter than me in that building. I know it. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's called this out. Nobody's like slapped you in the side of the back of the head and be like, "What are you doing, guy? You know, like, let's figure this out." But same like Antonio Gates. Like, so wherever Tony Gonzalez was, he was the target, right? Yeah. He was the guy. Gronk, the guy. Antonio Gates, the guy. Shannon Sharpe, I'd say a little lesser of the guy. He actually played with Ed McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey's dad, Rod Smith, right? Some of those guys who had big-time numbers under Elway. Kelce, the guy.
Yeah.
We know Kittle's the guy, but the rest of the league never has really known that because the forced issue is never there.
I think it's very fair to say, as you're saying, like that all of these guys on this list, their offenses revolved around them. Do you remember a time in which the 49ers offense revolved around George Kittle? I think the closest thing is that 2018 season and maybe the last season, 2024.
We won 4 games. We won 4 games. We picked number 2 overall. Nick Bosa. Jimmy Garoppolo tore his ACL. You know what I mean? Like, and he still found a way to make this happen, you know? Like, George Kittle better put up 1,500 yards receiving this year after this show, Steph, or I don't know anything about football.
And it's not lost on me too that earlier in the comments, one of the comments was that, hey, like, Brock Purdy, he's had some of the most success with Brock Purdy, like 2022, 11 touchdowns. That was with Purdy.
Most of that was in the back half of the season.
Exactly. And yes, I remember he was on a tear.
Yes.
2023, 6 touchdowns, 2024, 8 touchdowns. That's like his biggest span, like 3-year span of touchdowns in his entire career. Like, and
look at those
go back
yards per reception numbers.
That's what I'm saying.
Those are wide receiver numbers. You know what I mean?
It's been so impressive. So, and this is why, if we're gonna make the case for George Kittle to be able to get in this top 5 conversation, which I think he's just outside of that right now. Weston, it's what I think. He's just outside of that. Based on what the guys that we're looking at here, Travis Kelce, 11,000 yards. He belongs in this top 5 list. So I think Kittle's there. I feel really good about him cracking this top 5 with Brock Purdy as a quarterback these next few seasons.
No, I don't disagree. I think looking at my list right now, I probably have Kittle 6, like you said, like scratching the top 5. And I'll tell you what I have. I think it's Tony Gonzalez. I think it's Jason Witten. A lot of people want to sleep on Jason Witten. That dude, he was not a good Monday night broadcaster. We all know that, but he was a tremendous football player who did both very, very well, blocking in the run game and the pass pro and receiving. I would say Gonzalez, Witten, Kelce, Gronk, Shannon Sharp. So that's my 5.
That's your top 5?
That's my 5, yeah.
It's hard for me to really have a top 5 because I didn't watch a lot of these guys play. Yeah. Like I saw the last few years of Tony Gonzalez's career,
which were really good.
Exactly. By the way. He was with the Falcons. I had him on my fantasy team. Yeah. I think the first year I played fantasy, and it was awesome. And then
Kansas City Chief. Tony Gonzalez was otherworldly.
I never saw him as a Chief.
Go back and watch his first year in the league. Like, he's struggled, like drops, and then it just clicked on for him, and he's the best to ever do it at this point. So, but yeah, Gonzalez is good. You watch Witten, you've seen Kelce, Shannon Sharp. I get because he's definitely a little older too, right? And is in the news for all the wrong reasons at this moment in time. But you've definitely seen Gronk. So
yeah,
Greg Olsen, some of these other guys, like, it's just tough because there's just a lot of good players. Like Zach Ertz is a really good football player and still playing.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of really good tight ends that are, in the league. Great
conversation topic to be having.
I know. I hate to say this out loud because out loud it sounds like ridiculous. I'll say this. I love the tight end. I love the tight end position. I'll add the position at the end. Because I was just going to say I love tight ends, but that
me too.
that could be misconstrued. I love the tight end position. I appreciate it a lot. I think a lot of the reason that George Kittle says he appreciates it, they do everything. That's so underappreciated. I feel just like from a positional standpoint. And so anyone who does the position well as a whole, like George Kittle does, I think should be appreciated. And I'm so glad he's on our team. because he's a hell of a guy.
Yeah.
Hell of a guy.
Yeah, we're not even taking into account here, like, I mean, listen, Tony Gonzalez is a super charming guy. You've seen him on Thursday Night Football, like on Prime. Like, he does his thing. He's enjoyable. We know Travis Kelce. He's done reality TV shows with Taylor Swift, right? But like, George Kittle is a national treasure. You know what I mean? That we are fortunate that we got exposed to this before the rest of the league got exposed to it.
Indeed. All right. Well, for those of you tuning in, you guys have been in the chat, contributing to this conversation, but I'm curious what you guys think. Do you think George Kittle is in the top 5 right now? Do you think he's in a position to be in the greatest of all time conversation by the time his career is over? Looking at, some of these guys that we're looking at here, do you think he's up there? You think by the end of it, he will be? Here's a fun exercise, Weston, that I want to somewhat end on so I asked ChatGPT to project the next 5 seasons for George Kittle to the end of the 2029 season, which is when his current contract extension is over. So this is what ChatGPT had to say. So 2025, it projects 75 receptions, 1,050 yards, 7 touchdowns. 2026, pretty much the same. 75 receptions, 1,000 yards. Not getting very granular here from ChatGPT. Keeping it on 50 increments of 5 and 50, but also 6 touchdowns. 2027, it projects 70 receptions, 950. So like ChatGPT is expecting a steady and slow decline from George Kittle, as most players do. He's 31 years old right now. He's only going to get older with each year. I hear that's how that works. 2028, projecting 65 receptions, 900 yards, 5 touchdowns. 2029, 60 receptions, 800 yards, 5 touchdowns. And so in this 5-year span, ChatGPT projects 345 receptions, 4,700 yards, 29 touchdowns in a 5-year span. Would you guys go over or under this number?
Ooh.
So
over under is dependent upon the run game.
Exactly. That's why I was like, take me through your mindset, because I think we know that context matters, and the rest of the offense obviously matters to what George Kittle is going to contribute. If CMC is back to his, 2023 self, you're not going to have to rely on George Kittle as much. And, maybe you see some of his numbers decline compared to last year. There's so many factors here. I don't think there's another tight end on this roster that really threatens George Kittle. So I think we could safely say, he'll probably get that. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. For 2025, would you go over 1,050 yards?
Yes.
Okay. Me too. I think I would too. 2026, would you go over on 1,000 yards?
Yes.
Then I think that's like an easy one. Like I'd go, wouldn't you say you'd just go over on the...
Yeah, I'm not going, but I'm not going over on the whole thing. I think I'm like under, but slightly under, because I also think a piece of this is like 49er brass contingent, right? Like, hey, is Kyle still there? Is John still there? Right? Like the value that I think George serves a bigger value to them in their mind and their scheme than maybe he would to somebody else, especially as an aging player. And it is a position that commonly, when the wear and tear sets in, you see a tremendous drop off. But if he hit those numbers, Steph, right? Let's say this is spot on accurate and it's a push for the over and the under. He would finish 5th all-time in receptions.
Yeah.
4th all-time in yards receiving, and probably like 6th or 7th all-time in TDs. That's just the statistical portion of the evaluation of George Kittle that doesn't factor into, again, what else he does to make what has always and historically been a high-powered run offense, how he makes that go just as much as the running backs do.
Absolutely. If we added these numbers to his current career stats, he'd be at 883 receptions, 12,080 receiving yards, 74 total touchdowns. So if he retired, let's just say hypothetically, at the end of his current contract, then we look back at this list, and you were just kind of alluding to it, Weston, that he'd be up there. He'd be in this conversation.
Yeah. You know what's crazy, Steph? He's already in the conversation. You know what I mean? Like, we're not just having this because we're homers. This is an undeniable fact that he is one of the most talented players to play the position all time in the National Football League. The topic that we're debating is, will he finish his career as the GOAT? Yeah. Right? Like, there is enough history in George Kittle's career to say, wow, we're not having this debate about a rookie, right? Or somebody who just finished their rookie season. Like, this is a seasoned vet who's played a lot of regular season football, a lot of playoff football, and has had a lot of success, throughout. Like, I think he's already in the conversation, but I think we would both confidently agree you can't put him there yet. But he's definitely, like, I don't know, like, when people are talking to me, and this is how crazy the people that I hang out with. Everybody loves lists, Steph, right? Like, everybody loves a top 10 list of what's your top 10 favorite foods, what's your top favorite desserts, who's your top quarterbacks of all time, who's your top running backs of all time, who's your top 10. I am constantly lobbying for why this guy is in the top 3 of the conversation today. You know what I mean? Even though I told you he's 6th on my list, like, I'm already projecting the future without ChatGPT. Just saying, like, hey, this guy's going to go there. But I think I'm always doing it to lobby for the part of the game that the average fan, and by average fan, I just mean the non-49er fan, right, who's not watching the 49ers as intently as we do, right, to say, like, I don't think you realize what else this guy does. Like, he is Travis Kelce mixed with Mike Ditka. You know what I mean? At the position. That's what he is. Find me another combination of that in this list, and let's have a conversation about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like I said, I think over time the context will matter less and people just look at the stats.
Always.
But as of right now, when we have the complete picture of George Kittle, it is damn good, and it is the most well-rounded picture of a tight end that you will find.
Us having this conversation right now, Steph, this is another shameless plug for another 49er legend, Patrick Willis, right?
Yeah.
Who didn't play as long as a lot of the other guys that are considered the top players at his position. He has phenomenal stats, as does George Kittle, right, at the time of retirement. And basically, we're talking about the same wavelength at this point, right? Because when did P. Willie came in the league? What, 2007? It's gone by 2015. Played 8 years, right? Yeah. Like, in the league till he couldn't do it anymore because of his feet. But that being said, like, just watch this guy play. Because when you watched Patrick Willis play, you were like, this guy's the best to ever do it.
Yeah.
I don't show me somebody differently, but then you get removed from the league. And when it's time to evaluate you, all they talk about is stats, right? And that same thing is that's why the Super Bowl is so important for this conversation for George Kittle, because that's a stat that you need, especially when you look at a statistical giant like Tony Gonzalez, but Tony doesn't have a ring, right? Like, he's never won it. So if you have the one, it just reminds me of that whole Patrick Willis, like, debate. Like, when you watch George Kittle play, you're like, oh my God, he's just so much better than a lot of the people around him. And that's how I felt when I watched Patrick Willis. I was just like, oh my, this is a grown man amongst boys, like out there on the football field. The way he hit, the way he flew around the field, his instinct for the game, the passion for the game, everything. The dude was a rookie leading the NFL in tackles, right? Like he was just an absolute monster. George Kittle is that very same monster on the other side of the ball, but he's gonna run into the you didn't break 100 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Right? You didn't
That's
break
what I'm saying. Like
12,000 total yards. Like that's gonna happen. That's gonna happen.
Yeah. I know. And I think that's why I want to leave room for knowing that's gonna happen, you know, and not
safe space here, Steph. We know it's gonna happen.
I'm saving some space. But this was such a fun conversation.
Oh my God, yes.
I think it's very much well-deserved for George Kittle. And again, he's been the topic of conversation this past week, just due to the fact that Tight End University in its 5th year just wrapped up. Another successful year there. And just excited for all things George Kittle coming this season. And we have the great fortune of being able to watch him for, at least a few more seasons on this team. And hopefully he does end up retiring a Niner. And this is just the first of many conversations that we'll have just like this one, I'm sure, in regards to George Kittle. But I appreciate all of you that tuned in. Weston, appreciate the great discussion as well. Yeah. Make sure you guys like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. I'm also curious to know what the audio listeners, you guys think about all this. So make sure you guys hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, or anything like that, because I want to know your 2 cents on Steph49K for any of those accounts. But yeah, guys, have a good rest of your Monday, good rest of your week. Weston, are you doing anything fun for 4th of July?
No, I'm actually off this week for work. It's what do they call it? I already forget the term. They had a term for it. I'm just going to call it a rest week, a refresh week is what they wanted to call it. What you call whatever you want. Yeah,
let me apply there. I mean,
just a couple barbecues like later in the week. I got my little guy, or not my little guy, but my oldest is home throughout the week. So we're going to do, some pool, some just bop around for the week, and back to the grind on Monday like it never happened.
There we go. I'll see if I can catch some fireworks, maybe get a hot dog somewhere. I don't know. But hope
hot
you guys.
Dog's mandatory. That's like a mandatory
right?
must have. Yeah.
You gotta do it.
Be American, right? Like it's American. If you're gonna celebrate the American holiday, have the American food that will kill you eventually, but you gotta have it anyway.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoy your week. Weston, enjoy your week off. Appreciate all of you. Have a good rest of your Monday, folks. Peace.